It is party time. Welcome to another episode, a Wednesday episode of the Chad Prather Show. We're going to get after it. What do I need to tell you guys? First of all, watchchad.com is where all the fun stuff is. I want you to head over there. And if you're anywhere near the Pittsburgh area, if you're anywhere in Central America, Central United States of America, get in your car and drive. Next week on the 4th, I will be in Oakmont, Pennsylvania at the Oaks Theater. Come check it out. And all over the country, bouncing around, watchchad.com. On the couch, he has been on the show, but only via Skype, and I'm happy to have him in the studio, actually in the flesh, looking like Panama Jack, just shining over there. Larry Alex Taunton. Larry.
Hey, it is great to be with you, Chad. I love your digs. This is a pretty cool setup you got going here.
Yeah, people come into this studio, and it can be a little overwhelming sometimes. Of course, you're no stranger to being on a camera and being in studios, but sometimes people will come in here, and this studio is such a big, cavernous building, and then they come in here, and they're like, oh, wow, this is pretty sophisticated.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I could hit the crew over there with a 3-wood. So
when we were in the old room, when we had this studio in the old room, the guys were just like right there. Now they're 50 yards away from me. So.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm glad you're here, man. I'm glad you're here.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. It's great to be in Dallas. Great to see your studio. Great to hang out with you. Great to finally meet CJ.
Yeah, CJ's awesome.
So it's been terrific.
We all went to dinner last night in Dallas and had a great piece of beef and some good fellowship and time together.
It was very good.
I've been in your home and in Alabama, and you and I have become close friends over the last couple of years, and I appreciate your input, and I was able, thank you, by the way, for letting me come in and be a part of your podcast, which we taped this morning.
Sure did. It was great.
So you're in Dallas and doing some things here in a studio, and so you were like, it worked out perfectly. So
yeah, it did. And you treated me to a great dinner last night. Thank you, by the way.
Yeah,
thank you also for lunch at Yummy's or wherever we ate. But that was
Yummy Thai right across the street.
That was terrific, and I really enjoyed the recording today. It's fun. You look forward to those days. You have somebody who's sitting in the chair that you know is a friend of yours. Yeah, that isn't always the case, and when you have that, it's just great. So it was fun.
Well, there were certain things that I wanted to ask you last night at dinner, and I want to ask you again because you've been on the show. We've talked about numerous topics, and we're going to talk about them today too. We've talked about Ukraine, and we've talked about your book Around the World in Over 80 Days, various things that you've had going on, and I encourage people to watch your podcast, listen to your podcast, all your content, follow you on Twitter. Because you're my kind of thinker. I like the way you think. I like the way you communicate it. And you tend to understand the concept of not only critical thinking, but humor. And I appreciate that. You were in Europe for how long working on a new book? Just recently.
Yes, I was there for 3 months earlier this year. Yeah, I headed over there but bear in mind, so much of my work, one of the things I really like to do, Chad, is I like to get out and meet the people, and you do that here in the United States with all your concerts, your events, the things you're doing, and that way coming and sitting on my porch at the lake and smoking a cigar with me. I like to get out in another way. Part of that is travel through my writing and engaging with just ordinary people. But what inspired this particular trip was that I was taking a look at the World Economic Forum, which was meeting in Davos in January of this year. These are crazy people. And there's just no substitute for being there. And too often, as you and I know in our world, a lot of people who are commenting on the news, they're just pontificating from New York or DC.
Yeah.
And their world becomes increasingly insular. They don't really know what's going on in America. They don't know what's going on anywhere. And I thought, I want to get over there to Davos, and I want to see what's happening over there. I want to see who these people are, and just as I expected, the things I saw that you wouldn't see on TV or on the internet were pretty amazing. And then also while I was over there, I was hitting a few other countries with some other projects that I have going on.
So you're telling me when you go to Davos and you go to one, as we've talked about, Davos is not an easy place to get to.
No, it isn't.
So this is a very secluded part of Switzerland where the world's elites, if you will, come together and determine our financial futures. You mean they're not being altruistic when Klaus Schwab and the WEF gets together and talks about how beautiful life will be when we finally embrace financial utopia?
You will be happy.
Yeah. And so you were there.
I was there, yeah.
And is it kind of do you get the sense when you're there that it's kind of this elitist crowd, like we're a little bit better than you? And
yes, without a doubt. These are people that, you run into them in the study of history. I'm a historian by training. And, there's constant debates over figures like, let's say, Ivan the Terrible or Nero. Did these people, I mean, obscure academic debates, did these people lose their minds? And I tend to think, no, it isn't so much that they lost their minds. It was that anybody who has so much money that everyone around them kisses their ass, and they're people who can get whatever they can order life in such a way that nothing is not the way they want it, then any little disturbance in their life feels like a traumatic event. And when you're talking about billionaires like this, I mean, you're talking about just how to get there. Okay, well, I was coming from Rome, so I took, I think, 4 trains to get from Rome near Davos. But then I took a taxi from a nearby town, drove an hour in order to get there. This is a mountain retreat. It's a mountain. They're all over the Alps. They're all over the Pyrenees. It's a ski town. But you get there and you feel kind of like you're on Her Majesty's Secret Service, Telly Savalas, up in that ice mountain, retreat. Yeah. You remember that? And you picture Klaus Schwab, petting a cat. I mean, he just is that sort of individual. But see, the way they get there. So I spent a day going a distance that by U.S. standards is really not that particularly far. They flew in to Davos in their private jets,
right? But
they couldn't be bothered to drive from the airport into Davos, so they took helicopters.
Wow.
Helicopters from the airport into Davos, where they were then picked up by a fleet. I posted this all over my Twitter. Fleets of, not the starter BMWs and Mercedes, not the electric ones either. Yeah. These were the big, gas guzzling sorts. And the hypocrisy is just palpable that they're there to then lecture the rest of us on how you need to be an electric, smart car, in which you really don't even need to drive very much. You need to get rid of your electric stove. We need to get rid of cattle. We need to get rid of all these things because they're causing carbon emissions, and it's destroying the planet. Yeah. I'll see you. I've got another gig. I'm going to go get in my helicopter to go to the airport to then get in my private jet and go to the next gig where I talk about carbon emissions. This is who these people are.
And that reminds me. So Hillary Clinton, she tweeted out, I don't know, I guess it was yesterday. Hillary Clinton tweeted this graphic about MAGA Republicans. You can thank the MAGA Republicans for the hot summer weather. And she said they're pouring fuel on the climate crisis fire. This is Hillary Clinton.
Boy, she looks rough in that.
Can you imagine waking up to that, dude?
No, I can't.
Just a dim light. You're still a little tequila drunk from the night before, and you roll over.
Hey guys, is that photoshopped? Is that legit? That is frightening right there. She looks like Beetlejuice.
Yeah. No, that's not a good-looking woman at all. I understand why Bill stepped out often.
She does appear to have some UV rays, sun damage.
Yeah, well,
so maybe the sun is.
I posted underneath the tweet that she said it was a picture of her getting on actually Dan Bilzerian's private jet, walking in there. I just posted it was from behind her getting on the jet. I said, "Is this you?" Yeah. Because again, it's do as we say, not as we do.
Yeah,
but you can blame. I promise you, Hillary Clinton has a bigger carbon footprint than I do.
Yes, probably a bigger foot, but she is. That's just the way these people think, and it's why I urge people, don't call them elites. Call them elitists, because elites is a bit of a compliment to them. Elitist is who they are because they think they're better than you. They think they're better than me. They think they're smarter than you. They think they're smarter than me, and thus they're exempt from the rules. So you have guys like Bill Gates. On the one rare occasion, I did a podcast on this where Gates is confronted by a member of the media. I think it was Sky News. I'm not exactly sure who it was. Who said, "What do you say to those people who say that you're being hypocritical in telling people to reduce their carbon footprint when you're flying around on a private jet?" And Bill Gates said, "I'm comfortable with my role in this," and meaning Who are you to question me? You can't question me. I'm going to impose legislation, policies, laws, down on you via the contributions I make to various campaigns and individuals in order to change your life. But me, I'm exempt from these rules. This is the way they think, and this is why they have to be confronted.
Yeah. We're starting to see something interesting happen today. I don't know if anything's going to come from it or not, but Hunter Biden, he's another one he's above the law.
Yes.
He doesn't obey, he doesn't go along with the rules of society that you and I do, because we can just ring my dad and we can get him on the phone. And again, we know at this point in time, anybody that denies it is just being stupid or blindly ignorant on purpose. We know they peddled influence. Hunter was a shell company for his dad to do that. And they thought he was getting this sweetheart plea deal. And today, apparently, it has unraveled. So, real quick, Brandon, play clip number 15, please.
Breaking news out of Wilmington, Delaware, from the Hunter Biden plea deal hearing. Our Kara Scannell just ran out from inside the courtroom. Kara, bring us up to speed.
Yeah, John. So as I went back into the courtroom, the hearing had just begun again. The judge was back on the bench, and she was pressing the prosecution on this investigation and the four corners of this plea agreement. One of the prosecutors said that the investigation was very much ongoing, and that she asked him, well, what is not covered in this plea agreement if you were leaving the possibility for there being other future charges? So then the judge said, would this include a possible FARA charge that's not registering as a foreign agent? The prosecutor said no, the deal would not include that. It was at that point that she had said to the prosecution, if you can charge that, then what does this mean? And the prosecutors, she asked Hunter Biden's attorneys about that, and he said, well, then there's no deal. And the prosecutor said, then there is no deal. So Biden's team said that the plea agreement, as far as they understood it, was now null and void. They were moving ahead to talk about what the next steps would be in this case. So as of right now, the deal appears to be dead and off the table, and it remains to be seen how they're going to move forward. But he has been charged with those 2 misdemeanor tax evasion charges. But one thing we learned is that this investigation is very much still ongoing.
Yeah, they wouldn't treat me and you the same way on this misdemeanor tax evasion deal.
Of more than $1 million.
Yeah, 1.8 million.
Multiple years.
Something like that. And writing off hookers and stuff like that. Speaking of carbon footprints, this guy smoked enough stuff. Surely he's burned out some ozone.
Or snorted it.
Yeah. He's snorting ozone, huffing it, whatever. But it's interesting. So that for them to use this language, the investigation is ongoing.
Yes.
We'll see. Again, it's always a we'll see, but is there any teeth to anything ever?
Well, probably not. And what's not said in there, conveniently on CNN, is that they tried to have the investigation removed from the court docket, and this was this bogus call being made from Hunter Biden's law firm, where they're hey, can you get that removed, but pretending to be from another representative calling in. But what's funny is that the court, the receptionist saw on the caller ID the name of the law firm that was actually calling. Which is,
see it.
This is really Keystone Cop level sleuthing that they were doing to try to get the investigation removed from the from the court proceedings. But it's absolutely incredible. No, we definitely wouldn't get that. I just recently, this maybe give people a little picture of something like this, how this works for ordinary people. We got a notice from the IRS that we owed additional money to the IRS. And it said it was because my wife was receiving unemployment benefits. Well, she hasn't received any unemployment benefits ever. Neither have I. Mm-hmm. So we tried calling the IRS. They had a number. He called. Nobody answered. We never got it. We never got any human being on the phone. So eventually we got a law firm involved because we kept getting notifications, but we would write, we would call, we would get nothing. Well, and also the document said that she was receiving unemployment benefits from Puerto Rico.
Oh, wow.
Where she's never been.
Right.
Ever. It has taken us well over a year with a lawyer to finally get an IRS judge involved to declare, you guys don't owe us any money.
Yeah.
Well, gee, thanks. Now could you play the law firm for to acknowledge that this was a fraud case and that it was your incompetence that required us to have a lawyer involved in the first place because you're not answering the phone. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And the kind of money we were talking about here was, I think, $1,500. Virtually nothing. But what do you think would have happened if I had said, screw that? I'm not responding to this
100%.
letter. I'm not responding to this. They would have been on me much quicker than they would have been with a Hunter Biden who owes millions in back taxes.
Exactly. Ah, boy, I love bureaucracy. Let's tell you what, let's do. We're going to talk more about this stuff, but I'm going to go to a break. Before we do, I want to remind you guys, you haven't heard me talk about it in a while, but you have heard me talk about it for years. iTarget. If you have one, you know what I'm about to tell you. They have taken their product to the next level. If you've ever seen those competitive shooter practice timing drills out on the range, imagine being able to do that at home anytime you want. You don't have to spend a dime on ammo. Well, that's what the new iTarget Cube is all about. The iTarget Cube is fully compatible with your existing laser bullet. I just like saying laser bullet. That's cool. You can buy one or you can upgrade to the 3-pack, and it gives you a really cool, unique training experience. You can compete with your friends. You can practice the clearing drills. You can use a random mode to test your ability to react, and the system is going to time every shot you make. So right now, I'll save you 10% plus free shipping with offer code CHAD. I spell it Chad. When you go to itargetpro.com. iTarget comes in all the calibers that you need, from 9mm to .223, so you can train with almost any firearm. It's the easiest, most cost-effective way to train, and pays for itself in a single day. That's the letter I. Targetpro.com. itargetpro.com. Don't forget offer code Chad. We'll be right back. All right, so the LeBron James, Bronny James thing, he has cardiac arrest, and we were debating during the break whether or not any of these elites have ever had the vaccine.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I mean, do you think Bronny James? Do you think he took it? Do you think he actually took
LeBron came out with a quote a while back who said, we got together with my family and we decided it was in our best interest. Of course, this is the party line, right? That it was best interest that me and everybody in my family were going to get the vaccine, and they said they did it. Now, again, I don't believe Joe Biden's had it. I think that all of that crap was staged, and they were probably putting a little saline in his arm, when he was in his little whatever mock-up studio, that
fake Oval Office,
fake Oval Office, and so they kept making a parade out of that. I'm not sure that any of these elites. Listen, I am reasonably intelligent. I'm certainly not the smartest guy, but I got common sense, and you're not just pumping some crap inside of me. I got to believe that these people who are worth millions and even billions of dollars. I mean, LeBron James is a commodity, and Brandon, you made a great point. Actually make it again.
Yeah, so LeBron spends about $2 million per year just on nutrition and fitness. So he's incredibly dedicated to that, and he has the best training staff money can buy. So I sincerely doubt they told him to take this, because I'm sure they looked at the underlying science. And as one of the most valuable professional athletes on the planet, there's absolutely no reason to risk it. So, and initially, while he did come out and say, I'm making the best decision for me and my family, he initially caught flack because he said he wanted to look into it more. And it was after that where he finally was like, yeah, no, after looking into it, we're all definitely going to take it. So yeah, I don't believe the majority of these athletes actually took it.
Well, and I go back to, who would have thought that one day I'd be quoting the wisdom of Ice Cube, but in his little conversation with Tucker Carlson in the back of the car, well, that was a weird interview, but it's a good interview. He said, they make these decisions, and if they're wrong, there's no repercussions. Talking about the people who force this stuff. But if I decide against it, I face the repercussions.
Yeah.
It's so.
Oh, and you can't sue anybody.
You can't sue anybody, and you can't say, you can't come out and say, yeah, we weren't vaccinated. If you're in that world, you had to say you're vaccinated, whether you are or not. You had to. Because again, they were going to penalize you. Look at
Kyrie Irving,
Djokovic. I mean, the best men's tennis player in the world. They wouldn't even let him come in the country.
Yep.
So I don't know.
I think I agree that it seems unlikely that these guys probably did take it, but if they did, it's going to raise some very interesting questions. As it relates to, you have young men. It's not just Bronny. You see several young men who have. Young athletes who are collapsing. Yeah. Is it related to the vaccine? I don't pretend to know that, but it certainly seems to be anomalous.
And it's becoming more and more prevalent now.
Yes.
statistically and historically speaking, black male basketball players do suffer more cardiac issues in that sport, in that world, okay? You can go back even prior to the mRNA vaccine, and there are evidence. People have had heart attacks.
Yeah.
Young people have had, soccer players particularly. They have an enlarged heart. I mean, they're like polo horses, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
They run all over the field nonstop. It's so. But now you literally, whereas you had some situations, now you got a lot of situations.
Yeah.
Like you got thousands in Europe of soccer players who have dropped dead at this point, and they're not talking about that.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible to me. I'm going to be interested in watching how this story plays out, because it's one thing if we're talking about a teammate, of LeBron James, that this happens, but parents get quite emotional about their own children.
Yeah.
And if there was some kind of back room dealing on this, hey, we want you to say this publicly, but we won't make you take the vaccine. Or if he did actually take the vaccine, I think you're going to see a pretty vocal LeBron James.
Yeah.
If he has any reason to believe that
He's
in any way, shape, or
vocal
form.
person, so I wouldn't
yes,
be.
he is.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes out. And of course, I wish the kid the best. I mean, I don't like LeBron James as a person. He and I wouldn't get along in a conversation probably, but I don't wish any ill on his kid or his family.
Certainly not.
So it's a horrible thing. We talked about the World Economic Forum and all those guys, and I don't know if you saw where, Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, yesterday, day before, she actually doubled down on the fact that the Biden administration is now coming after your water heater. So they want to get water heaters obsolete by 2029.
Yeah.
So you and I have been in enough third world countries. We're good at cold showers. We've also, you've been in a relationship with a woman for a long time. You're probably good at them as well. So it looks like this is what we have to look forward to.
It's the way these people think. Will they have hot water? Will they be eating bugs? Will they be still have gas stoves? Well, of course they will. But they really think, C.S. Lewis once said the worst kind of tyranny is that tyranny which is exercised for your own good.
Yeah.
It's that person who tyrannizes you with a clear conscience because they really believe that what they're doing is really for your own good. And that is the way a lot of these people think. And it's interesting because when I was, by the way, going back to Davos, when I was there, just sitting in a coffee shop, engaging some of these people in conversation, and they say WEF, World Economic Forum. They say, "Are you here for the WEF?"
Yeah.
So the WEFers, I was just pretending to be a WEFer, and so people would talk to you quite openly because they just thought I was one of them. And what you begin hearing them saying is some astonishing stuff that just, not very long ago, people would have said, that's nonsense. No, they're speaking very openly about depopulation.
Yeah.
This is true.
They believe in it.
They are talking about this stuff because they really think it. Recently, you may have seen Kamala Harris. Sure. She said that, we need people to start having fewer kids. We need to reduce the population. This is how these people think. They are anti-human to their core.
Yeah,
Godless.
I have said for years, how the billionaires want their own private island. They want the globe to be their private island.
They do.
These elitists truly want. They'd be happy with about 3.5 billion people, max.
Yeah, well, actually the number that, suddenly his name has gone straight out of my head. MIT, he's a World Economic Forum agenda contributor, Dr. Dennis Meadows. He is a guy, you can find him. You can find it on my podcast. You can find him on YouTube, elsewhere, where he is saying, and he sounds like your uncle. But then you start thinking, maybe it's my uncle on meth. I don't know. But he says things like, we really need to reduce the global population. Right now we're at about 8 billion. But, the planet really can only sustain about 1 billion people. But, maybe if we do it really efficiently, possibly 2 billion people. And then he starts talking about how we need a dictatorship. And this is all, all these very reasonable tones. These people believe this stuff, and this is the direction they're working in. And so when I say they're anti-human, I mean they're fundamentally anti-human, and that's because their godless worldview, that's where it leads them.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the reasons why I've been very slow to just pass praise on to Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a transhumanist. I mean, historically speaking, he wanted to chip your brain and everything else. And whether or not he still adheres to those things, I have no reason to believe that he doesn't. Whether or not he still adheres to those things, maybe he's had a change of heart. I don't know. He's changed in a lot of things. But I don't trust any of these guys. When Larry Fink, who's the head of BlackRock, gets up there and says, we have to modify and control behavior.
Yes.
They mean that.
Yes, they do.
They mean that. And I mean, to the point where New York City is now outlawing restaurants. Like if you order DoorDash, you can't get a plastic fork, plastic spoon, or plastic knife.
Oh, now you got to get rid of
anymore.
pizza ovens.
You got to get rid of the pizza ovens.
Yeah.
You've got to get rid of the washers and the dryers. You got to get rid of the gas stoves. Now we're talking about the water heaters. You got to get rid of your car.
But then when you start talking about something that really is a global problem, and I know you've talked about this quite a lot on your show and also on your social media, Sound of Freedom, child trafficking.
Yeah.
Well, then they come along and go, this is such an exaggerated issue. They downplay it and act like it's not a big deal. And again, it kind of comes back to what I'm talking about, that they are anti-human. They don't care about those children. They do not care what they want. There's no Greta Thunberg who's out there championing those children. They want you focused on the evils of your gas, the alleged evils of your gas stove, of your alleged carbon footprint, more than they care about changing the situation of children who are being sex trafficked.
Yeah.
They don't want you talking about that.
Which is obviously why we make the next logical conclusion and take that step and say, well, you guys must be involved. If you're not going to speak out against it, and it seems like there's a smoking gun here and there laying around. But of course, as soon as you do that, they say, well, Donald Trump hung out with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah. This is of course the way these people work. We do know that they are in on it.
Yeah.
And to what extent they are in the sense of actual engaging, are the executives at CNN, are they all engaged in, child sex trafficking? They are certainly running interference for it. Yeah. What possible motive could you have in downplaying a crisis like child sex trafficking? And it's a global thing. You and I have discussed this many times. We've both been in many countries around the world. You can't go to a third world country that you don't see elements of this.
Yeah.
It just comes up all over the place. And then you add to that, our adopted daughter from Sasha. I mean, she can tell stories and just did on one of our podcasts.
Yeah, and everybody needs to, we'll talk about it in the next segment, everybody needs to listen to that particular podcast with your daughter, Sasha, who you adopted from Ukraine, and what she went through. And it doesn't even scratch the surface of what she has been through. And so it's an incredible story, incredible testimony, not the least of which, and most importantly, I believe, is just God's grace in her life. But wow, what a powerful
I appreciate that
episode
on her behalf.
Yeah.
She's a remarkable human being.
Yeah. We're going to talk about it a little bit more. All right, guys, before we go to break, everybody deals with that pain from time to time. And I'm not talking about Brandon and George over there. Talking about the stuff in your joints, that stuff that doesn't go away, that inflammation that you just live with. You sustain it, you deal with it, you move forward. Sometimes you can't move forward because it consumes your life. That pain, you wake up every single day and it fills your world and steals your joy. What are you going to do? Well, I believe that you can actually fix that, and you don't have to live in pain. Relief Factor, they're a great partner, but they're a great product as well, and they're a great way to reduce pain, which is mostly caused by inflammation in the joints. And when you take it as directed, it could absolutely change your life. Now, it's not a drug, but it is developed by doctors, and I think you're going to love it. It reduces the inflammation in your body, and 70% of the people who take it keep on taking it because it works. So if you're living with pain, try the 3-week quick start. It's only $19.95. It's a trial pack, and you can get it by going to relieffactor.com or call them on the phone at 800-4-RELIEF. That's relieffactor.com. We'll be right back. So we were having lunch. We went to the Thai place over here, and you asked me, have you been in Thailand? I was like, yeah, and we didn't bring this up to talk about it, but it's like you talk about the sex trafficking. We helped found an orphanage years ago in Thailand and then also in Cambodia, and it was specifically dedicated to girls who were at that age, usually around 6-7 years old, where they are taken off the streets and usually trafficked into prostitution. it's prevalent in a place like Thailand.
Yeah,
It's become a punchline
for sex tourism.
Yes.
Jared from Subway, I believe, was up to no good over there. It is Thailand is certainly most famous for it, and I should say this: Thailand has many wonderful things that are worth going to visit. Unfortunately, it does get this reputation. Murray Head's song, "One Night in Bangkok."
One Night in Bangkok. That song came
makes
on
a hard
recently.
man humble.
Yeah, we were talking. I said we sang that. That song was popular in the 80s.
Yeah, it was.
And I said nobody had a clue what they were talking about. They just sang right through that little song, that little ditty, and 100% that's what it was about.
It absolutely is. It's part of a musical or something called Chess. Mm-hmm. But they nail what Bangkok is and what it's like. And of course, the government has often denied that this is the case, but it's a major source of revenue for them. And what they're doing is they're bringing a lot of these girls in from the north who are coming from rural areas, and they're funding their families. They're sending money back home. And I recently told an interesting little story on our podcast where I was in one of these tuk-tuks, where it's little three-wheeled big golf carts, so they drive you around all over the city. And listen, I'm a guy who's been I have been all over the world, so I feel like I know pretty well every trick of the trade.
Right.
But I wasn't ready for this one. A guy that I was driving around with, I can't believe I fell for this. He took me to, and in Bangkok, turns out this is quite prevalent, but he took me, to, hey, do you want a suit? And I was like, not really. But he pulls up in front of a suit place and he says, if you go in there for just a few minutes, they actually pay me whether you buy anything or not. And I was like, yeah, I'll play along. I'll go in and look around. Then he drives me to another place, like a souvenir store, and I'm not really looking for a snow globe, but same thing. And I thought, well, I'll go in there and get something kind of funny, send to the kids or something. And then the next place, he's telling me, he says, this is a cool nightclub, and I was like, I'm not a partier. I have no desire to go to a nightclub, but he's just touring me around. I'll go into a city and I'll hire a taxi driver because nobody knows cities like taxi drivers, and you can have some interesting conversations. So we pull up at this place and it looks normal enough outside, but as soon as I walk in, these curtains open and it is all these girls who are sitting on stage, like a stage. Mm-hmm. Now, as far as I could tell, these were probably adults, but I'm horrified because I've realized I've just walked into a brothel. So I turn around to leave, and as I'm leaving, this guy is following me out and he says, what you like. And you got the sense that if I had said, I'm into little boys or I'm into little girls, they would have provided it. I'm almost positive that would have been the case. Yeah. And meaning that the window front of these operations is that it's all quite legal, and it is legal. The prostitution is legal, but behind that, under the counter, so to speak, is another product that they know a lot of Western businessmen or so on are looking for, and they'll sell it to you. They're just not going to put it in the window front, and that's these children that are being trafficked. And of course, they're being trafficked all over the world.
All over the world, and it's bigger than ever.
Bigger than ever.
I mean, and people can complain about the makers of sound. I've seen it all, because I heavily promoted Sound of Freedom. I know
you did. Yeah,
I'm friends with the makers. Good. I'm friends with, Tim Ballard. I mean, Underground Railroad. All these different things. I've known them for years. We were able to screen the movie years ago. The work that Glenn has put into it. It's amazing to me. People push back and they say, oh, it's not happening like that, or maybe you need to investigate the movie makers. And I'm like, I don't care if God used Lucifer himself to make this movie. It's an eye-opening movie that, regardless,
and brings attention to it, the subject.
Exactly. And it's opening people's eyes to what's happening. And then they say, well, it's happening in the churches and it's happening. Stop. That's that's a smoke screen. We know it's happening everywhere. There are sick individuals in humanity. We know that. We got to put them all in the wood chipper, as far as I'm concerned. But you got to expose this network for what it is. You adopted your daughter, and I love your family, and I love your wife. Lori's awesome, and she's so gracious. I mean, I go to y'all's house there in Alabama, and it's a beautiful setting. It's a beautiful. You live in a retreat.
Love having you. We got to get CJ there next.
We'll see about that. We'll see if she can come. We don't know. Girls mess things up, dude. But your wife is so charming and so good, and she's just good. And she's a strong woman. She has to be to put up with you. But your daughter,
100%.
Your daughter, Sasha, how old was she when you adopted her? Now, I know you brought her out of a utopia, this wonderful place where we spend a lot of money. Called Ukraine.
Ukraine is a hellhole.
Yeah.
It really is. We adopted her just. She left the country on May Day. We celebrate every year with her May Day. Her birthday is May 19, so she was 10, almost 11 when we adopted her. But we celebrate with her both her birthday and May Day every year because we go. It was on this day, Sasha, in 2009 that you left that country. This was your liberation day, May 1st, and so she was a child, but. 10 years, she was abandoned at birth, and the first 10 years of her life were spent in 3 different Ukrainian orphanages. So while we can all say, gosh, she was a child, she spent a decade in hellish places, truly hellish places.
Yeah, experiencing abuse and just the
of every
horrible
kind.
Things that you can imagine from something.
And she's the most lovely soul.
She is, and she's a beautiful girl inside and out, and married now,
happily married,
with a child,
little Abby Kate, their daughter, my granddaughter, who's just as cute and as happy as can be. And I was sitting and thinking when little Abby Kate is bouncing on my knee one day, how remarkable it was what the Lord had done because. See, what happens with these children is not only in the orphanage are they trafficked. I mean, they're sold, can be rented out. They're drugged and taken somewhere, for nefarious reasons. But then they're pushed out onto the street at 16. They have no education. They have no training.
So they're kicked out of the orphanage.
That's right. They're given just a little bit of money. And they often end up in the hands of the mafia. He uses the boys maybe for muscle or something like that. The girls, 60% of them end up in prostitution. And we think that maybe Sasha's biological mother may have been in the orphanage herself and then eventually had a child. And then, she didn't abort the child. We're very grateful for that. And but that it just perpetuates itself. You see that you end up on the street, you have a child, that child goes into an orphanage, and then it just keeps going. This sort of thing is very prevalent and very common. And yet here I am with Abby Kate thinking, Sasha is out from that, and now little Abigail is 2 steps out from that. Yeah. And here she is. She will grow up without any knowledge of any of these things, be so foreign to her. But that's because of the determination of her mother.
Yeah. I hear people all the time because I've been very outspoken as a pro-life man who fights for those who don't have a voice, and that is the unborn. And so we get pushback. Say, well, that's the problem with you conservatives. You don't care about them after they've been born. I was like, well, I'm the wrong tree to bark up because I've started orphanages. We've done...
It's complete nonsense.
It's nonsense.
Evangelicals adopt more children than any other demographic.
100%.
By far.
And it's amazing to me that these who want to push back, and I said, listen, what about these products of rape? Well, I it's sad, it's tragic, and I'll tell you what, I know that 2 wrongs never make a right. So murder on top of the ignominy of rape never heals anybody. Now you're adding a guilty conscience on top of that. And so, to your point with your granddaughter now, I mean, just in a generation, so much healing happens, but so much is washed away. And that's what people take for granted. They think we're living for just this generation. We're living beyond ourselves. Whether you know it or not, you are a seed that's planted. Now, it may not bear fruit. It might be a crappy seed. I hope that we choose to live our lives in such a way that the seed planting comes out and bears good fruit. But in just one generation, it's amazing how much can be washed away.
It's absolutely incredible by God's grace, God's goodness in my life, in the life of my children, Sasha's life, our grandchildren. It's absolutely amazing to see what can happen there when small steps of faith, are taken. And even that process of adoption, I don't know if I've ever said this to you, Chad, the government itself really doesn't want to see the adoption take place. So a lot of pressure is applied. The federal government allows them. There's money to be had. It's a business, but at the lower level, it's kind of embarrassing, because it's a reminder that they're a third world country. And so part of the process of adoption means you have to go before a judge.
Yeah.
And Sasha, at 10 years old, had to stand before this judge in this courtroom by herself while the judge is saying to her very, very leading questions. Are you sure you want to be adopted? Do you know these people? You'll never be able to come back again. They don't speak English there. She was trying to frighten her. And Sasha, and one of the boldest things, maybe the boldest thing I've ever seen, he just kept saying da, 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 which is yes, yes, yes in Russian. Do you want to be adopted? Da. Do you know that they speak English in that country? Da. Do you know you can't come back? Da. And she, Sasha, just as bold as brass, would not be intimidated by that judge. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
She doesn't have the sophistication of here's this legal mind, this woman who's doing this, and here she is, just a 10-year-old. No one is standing with her. She's standing by herself in front of the judge who's trying to pressure her to say no. How incredible is that?
Yeah, and based off of, guys, you got to watch the podcast episode. Where can people find the podcast?
They can find Ideas Have Consequences, Larry Alex Taunton. They can find that on YouTube. They can find it on my Twitter, at Larry Taunton.
And this podcast is you've been doing that for a while, but this podcast is really blowing up, and I'm proud to see that.
I appreciate
I love this format that you're doing with this podcast, but the episode you did just last week?
Just last week.
Powerful. Everybody needs to go download, stream, and listen to this.
It was hard.
Story.
I was so proud of Sasha because it was hard for her to do that podcast, but she wanted to do it. Yeah, I mean, imagine I went to see Sound of Freedom with her.
Yeah.
So her husband, her fine husband, Dalton, is sitting on one side of her, and I'm sitting on the other, and we're both kind of watching her as all this is taking place, because I thought this might really trigger some trauma for her. These memories, we have kind of a rule in our household. We don't ask Sasha questions. We let her reveal what she wants to ask, what she wants to tell us. Nothing more. I don't want to delve there. And but she felt so strongly about that film, so strongly about the issues, that she wanted to speak about them. And Sasha's not a polished speaker, and that's part of what makes her a very powerful spokesperson, because if you watch that podcast, you can tell that it's costing her something to relive this and to tell her story. And she says, Dad, I need you to carry it. I need you to carry the podcast. And then just ask me some questions, and I'll answer them. And she's just beautiful in the way that she goes through that and the way she does that.
It's powerful. We were talking about it again at dinner last night, and I was just recollecting some of the things that I heard in the conversation and across the dinner. And then CJ looks at me and she goes, "Are you crying again?"
We both were.
Yeah. She in the room? I don't like you, woman. You can't cry secretly with CJ around. She will call you out. I wear my tears with honor, lady. Crazy woman. Golly. I don't know what to do. Anyway. Dude, it's powerful, and I want everybody to go.
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
And everybody needs to tune in. And we had a great conversation on. I don't know when that one's going to be released, but we solved all the world's problems.
Yes, we did, and that'll probably come out in the next week or two. I have to go. Speaking of traveling, and speaking of child trafficking and horrors in the third world, I'm going to be back in Nigeria soon, which is arguably the most dangerous country in the world. I've been there before.
No question about it.
In the north of the country, it's pretty rough. And the last time I was there, I'm going to Lagos. The last time I flew into Abuja and then went out on the open road 6 hours to the north.
Yeah.
And that is, you're driving past, burning villages. You're driving past, burning tires in the middle of the road to try to slow you down, military checkpoints, this kind of thing. I won't be going into the north this time, which should be a little bit better. But you see some things that are quite upsetting, and things that are being ignored. The slaughter of Christians that is taking place around the world. Did you know that 100,000 Christians die for their faith in what is referred to as a situation of witness, meaning We're not just talking about having car accidents. We're talking about people who are targeted for their faith. 100,000 a year of them are dying. It's absolute. I like the way the Spectator put it. It is the unreported catastrophe of our time. It's a genocide.
Yeah.
And that's taking place in Nigeria as we speak with the Fulani herdsmen militia and the Boko Haram.
Yeah. People are often quick to talk about things like Ukraine. They don't talk about what's happening in places like Nigeria. And they don't care.
And don't care.
They don't care. They just think, they've been killing each other for generations. Well, they have in Eastern Europe too, but, for millennia.
Yeah.
But yet here we are. We get involved in that, but we don't think about, prayers for you going back into Nigeria. That's one place, as many times as I've been, as much time as I've spent there, I've said I don't want to ever go back.
Well, and when we were talking about, the time I spent in Europe, one of the things that I did earlier this year, which I didn't mention, I don't know if I told you about this, but I went to Poland because I wanted to take a little bit of a look at the war refugee situation, the refugees who are coming out of Ukraine. And there are loads of them are coming into cities like Warsaw and Krakow. And guess what? They will tell you they're not seeing any of those billions of dollars.
They're not seeing
None
any
of it. So when I hear people say things like, well, Ukraine ought to be doing great with all the money we're sending over there. Well, it's going to corrupt causes. It's being laundered. Yeah. It is not helping the war refugee situation. It's mostly Christians who are funding it here to help those people.
Right. We now know that the Ukrainian bank, their federal bank, if you will, their bank account has more money in it now than it ever has in the history of the country.
Yep.
And that is American dollars. All right, we've got to take a break. Guys, I'm going to tell you one more time, get them guns out. You got to clean those guns. It's a dirty job, but it is a responsible part of being a gun owner. And I don't like using the patches. I don't like using the bore snakes. I like using Barrel Buddy. Barrel Buddy is a better solution, and I think you'll like it. They compress to fill the interior of your gun's barrel, and they clean the rifling grooves. They fit all the caliber firearms you may have. And they're composed of the polymers that don't leave behind the residual particulates, which makes it a safer process as well. It scrubs, it collects particulates, it absorbs the remaining residue, it buffs the interior surface clean. You can lubricate your firearm while you're cleaning it. It really is genius. Cleaning your guns is a really important step, and some of your guns are begging for a bath, folks. So head over to barrelbuddy.com. It's a new concept. It's a better way to take care of your firearms, and it's extremely affordable, and you're going to love it, I guarantee it. Go to barrelbuddy.com. That is barrelbuddy.com. We'll be right back. Hey guys, I want to give a special thanks to my very dear friend Larry Taunton for being here. There's a lot more we want to talk about. I want to get into some of his history, but also what kind of gave him a name, and that is debating atheists around the world. We're going to do that on Overtime this week, so make sure you're subscribed to Blaze TV, blazetv.com/Chad. Use promo code Chad if you haven't subscribed. But Overtime is under the Chad Prather Show tab in the Blaze app on Fridays, and I want you to watch it. So watchchad.com is where all the fun stuff is. We love you. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.